Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 99 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So I thought it would be really helpful and interesting to share some of the teachings that happens in my group coaching sessions. When you are a one-on-one client, you get access to these sessions where I teach on topics that will help you reach your goals more effectively and more sustainably. And today's podcast is a snippet from one of these sessions on mind-body practices specifically, and how you can see the variety of ways that you can learn how to trust yourself and your decisions, develop a greater sense of inner peace, and lead yourself and others, all while enjoying the ride. So dig in, enjoy, and let me know what you think. Today, we are diving back in to mind and body practices. So last week was really around this whole mind-body connection. I think if you weren't here last week, definitely go back and listen into it, because we start to talk through even that idea of how do we experience it for ourselves. So a lot about intuition, a lot about self-leadership comes from knowing ourselves, or comes from having a sense of knowing what it is we believe, knowing what it is that we think makes sense, feeling very clear about what do we want to do next and what feels like the right next best thing in terms of relationships, in terms of our work, and in terms of ourselves and our bodies. And we use our bodies, which is why we talk about mind-body connection, as a way for us to understand ourselves. But many of us have overridden our bodies through, whether it is just through this sense of disconnection, just not noticing, not really having a connection to it, not necessarily good or bad, but just, we haven't really stopped. So we actually did an exercise where we kind of sat really still and kind of connected into ourselves a little bit more and started noticing some sensations in our body. When we start thinking about mind-body connection, it's not just one or the other. It's only the mind, right? Like there's no body and we just can manifest everything through our minds, and it all, and our bodies have nothing to do with it. There are biological things at play, and we need to be aware of that and take that into account as well. But it's not just the body either, right? It's not just the body is its own thing and it does what it wants, and we have, kind of no connection to it. And so this is where we start to bridge the gap to say, it's not just one, it's not just the other, but there is this really beautiful cycle that we can live into that's really about us being really human in this lifetime and us having a human experience. And with that, there are actually practices that you can do that help you get more grounded, help you make space so that you can allow intuition to flow and to cultivate a sense of trust and that knowing and that feeling of, even if I don't always know, or I feel like I'm indecisive right now, what can I do to kind of help me move through this right now as well? And when we start to talk about connection to our body and allowing intuition to flow, I think many of you are probably familiar with meditation. That is like a really common practice. How many of you meditate on a regular basis? Okay.
So like semi, Bonnie. Okay. And how long, Bonnie, have you been doing it regularly?
Um, Probably like a year.
Okay. And how, like, do you feel a difference as a result?
hmm Yeah, I
Yeah.
I feel a lot more space between like thing happen and reaction. Like I definitely feel that suspension more, and I feel more able to come back to center when things do get a little crazy, and much more able to ground with my breath and like aware of like if I'm say facilitating a meeting and like I can start to feel, and have gotten really good at like secret breathing on Zoom, where I'm like taking a deep breath, but not having it be like super obvious, but like using my breath to like come back and be open to what's happening. So yeah, I see a lot of different changes, and just a more even mood, I think, which we've worked on other things too, but I think the meditation has helped with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, we're going to talk a lot today about mindfulness and go a lot further into it. And I'll share in the coming months more things that will be coming your way around that space. But this really is everything in the sense of the ability to feel good. We talked last week about you can't buy inner peace and that sense of just, I still feel okay, right? Like I still feel okay despite X, Y, and Z happening. But you can cultivate it and you can build it. And that's the beautiful thing as well. This is something that you can actually practice with nothing but you. And all it takes is some intentionality and a little bit of time and learning, right? Kind of how we work. And so we'll go through this today to kind of dive into it a bit more. But I talk about this a lot and in many different ways because it is so fundamental. And I think that to really grasp it takes a lot of work and practice. So I don't think I could ever probably say it enough because I do think that this is an area where there's like another layer for us to kind of peel and say, "Ooh, okay, like let me work on that edge that's coming up." So, with that being said, we will spend some time talking about mindfulness and some other practices as well. Let me know if there's any interest in some of the other ones, and then we can spend more time in other sessions going through some of the other ones. Okay, so where we start is always going to be in the present moment. And I remember when I started doing a lot of spiritual work and kind of diving back into more, I would say, contemplative practices, there was a lot of talk around like the present moment. Like, I just really want to be present. Like people would tell me that I just really want to be present. And I remember in the beginning being like, what do people mean by being present? Like it felt like a buzzword. Like I just want to be here. Because in my mind, I was like, well, where else would someone be? Of course, you're in the present moment. But I really started to understand it more when I realized that what we really want to do is what Bonnie was saying, create a space when things feel like they're going very fast, almost like the Matrix, where like Keanu Reeves is like dodging things and moving really slowly, but things are happening really quickly. And that's that ability for us to kind of control what we can control, which is our experience of how something is happening. So even if it feels like time is moving fast, we realize that time is a construct of our own feeling. And we kind of relax into it a bit more and we intentionally realize, okay, maybe what if there was more time than I thought? What if I can pause and think through this and I will have a clear answer? This happens though only when you can take a step back. And it happens when we stop moving in autopilot. So this is why it's important for us to say, well, what is the present moment? The present moment is to really say, okay, instead of all the like thoughts about the future and future tripping on this and then this happening, I don't know, and then it's going to be terrible. We're just like, okay, well, what is it now? Do I even have to do anything about this? No, right? Or when I need to, I can make that decision. And if you're used to kind of a really busy life, it's really hard to put down all the to-dos. It's really hard to do that. So if you can't do that yet, even this practice helps you start observing when you are doing it, right? And then you start to think, okay, am I doing that thing because I'm nervous and I don't know what else to do? So I just do something instead of just sitting with it and noticing what's happening and asking myself, well, why do I feel the need to do X, Y, and Z? Is it like, do I feel there's a gap somewhere that I'm trying to fill? And why is that? And it takes a little practice and time. So we'll talk through kind of how this works and we'll practice it ourselves. So this is what we talk about reacting instead of acting. When we react, it is that kind of autopilot behavior that is not necessarily very intentional, but when we act, there's a different sense of that word, right? We're taking action and we're being proactive. All the things that we feel are, quote unquote, the ideal way for us to show up in the world really comes from us just taking a pause and saying, what makes sense based on what's happening right now? And let's move forward. And so it's not a lot about intuition. And you guys have probably experienced Akashic record readings with me and all these things. Sometimes intuition feels like this magic or this voodoo thing, like what is happening and how does all that work? There is a sense of how do you know things that I haven't told you or that you can't see? But that's when we have to start realizing that our thoughts, we can't see them, but wouldn't you say that they're also real and they're happening? Right? So there is still things that are out there that are almost as tangible as the things that we can actually sense. And what makes it really tangible for us right now, and the way we can bridge that gap is to say, how does that feel in my body? Right? And then we can be like, oh, that's coming from like a thought. It's not just, I just feel this way. There's something happening here. And this is why we go into mind and body practices, ones where we connect with our body. So mindfulness is one of these mind body practices where you are noticing, you're observing what's happening, whether you're eating, whether you're moving, whether you are just sitting in stillness, or whether you're talking to someone. And you have a sense of not just noticing, but awareness and a non-judgmental attitude around it. Breath work is another way. We always go to the breath because the breath is the one thing that we have right here, right now. You're always breathing. That's a really key way to drop into the present moment. So breath work is this very intentional kind of like, I'm going to put patterns and rhythm into my breathing. I'm going to breathe deep. I'm going to breathe slow. I'm going to breathe in, out in certain patterns, right? Kundalini uses a lot of breath work as well. And that helps us to focus and it helps us to kind of channel our energy. And we a lot of times think of our breath as one of the ways that we can kind of channel energy. Tapping. So how many of you have heard of emotional freedom technique or EFT? Some of you may have experienced tapping with me in the one-on-one sessions, but tapping is really powerful for moving energy or when you're feeling really triggered. You tap on different acupressure points in your body as you say certain things. And usually it's led. Well, I would lead you through it. Like I will do it on myself. And it's a way of kind of talking through something while also touching like physical points in our body and all these kind of points. And then you're talking through kind of like a topic and a situation as it's happening. And it helps you move that level of charge. Where do you feel on this? You feel like a 10 and you end up kind of moving down to a 1, and it helps to kind of move through things. So tapping is a really good tool that I've used a lot for clients and myself when things get really challenging or difficult. And it helps us, again, connect to our body, but talk through things and move energy through our body. So what's happening is that we're trying to process things in the external world into healthy outcomes in our internal world. You may never need to utilize any of these things if you weren't taking the external world to heart. Does that make sense? Like if we weren't so attached to like a certain outcome and that didn't happen, and that means this, and I'm a failure, or the money's tight now and that means something, or this person said this thing, which means I'm not so good at the thing that I thought, I wanted to be good at, or people are rejecting, or I'm not making, these are all external world outcomes and ways that we kind of validate like our existence and why are we even here to begin with, and that kind of conditioning. And so if you never even related to that, if you were just like, well, that's just that, and I'm all good, you wouldn't really need to do breath work or tapping or yoga. It would just be, like, sure, I'll do it, but I'm good. Right. So sometimes we get so into our practices that we forget about what the point of it is to begin with, and maybe we miss something, like we miss a session, and that drives us even more crazy than we would have if we never even had this thing that we had, right? Like if you had an exercise routine and then it was to help with your mental health and you're feeling good and the serotonin's flowing, and then you miss it and you start to kind of beat yourself up, it's almost worse. So just a reminder that these practices are just tools that we use to help us achieve a sense of inner peace, to help us not have so much tie into that external world, to feel better, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally. And every time we do it, we start to have a new behavior that starts to come into play. And so, as Bonnie was talking about, she's noticed actual changes in the way that she is, in terms of maybe in a meeting and you're kind of nervous or something's happening and you're trying to manage the situation. These are great tools for leadership scenarios, really great tools for decision making. There's been numerous studies on how mindfulness improves stress and pain, like chronic pain especially, how it actually improves focus, problem solving. Right? So you can start to see that if we stopped thinking about everything from this external lens, we can probably be a lot more clear, a lot more dropped in, a lot more sure about ourselves. And that's where the intuition really starts to become really strong. When I started practicing meditation like daily, and I had shared like a story where I, went to Buddha camp when I was 8 years old. I didn't know it was a weird thing to do then, but because you're 8, you just do what your parents show you and you just do these things. And I started meditating then, but then, things happen as you get into your 20s and you just start living your life like everyone else and you kind of want to fit in and do all the other things. And it wasn't until everything started kind of breaking down and I was just like, the world, it's hard. Like it's hard to be in this world sometimes. And that's when I started coming back a lot more to the meditation. And I remember I really noticed the effects of it even in my dreams. And that's where I realized, wow, like in a place where I almost felt like I had the least amount of control, I was able to have like this conflict that I was just, you know what, it's okay. It's fine. And so I'm doing a class on dreams right now. That's really interesting. But one of the things that I think is interesting to note and that I would ask you guys to think about is, I'm sure you have dreams of persistent, stressful things that may be on your mind, things that bother you. And sometimes in your dream world, they come back up and it's really difficult to manage. I would set the intention that you allow yourself to have mind body practices that are strong enough that it even affects that dreaming environment too, because that's when you start to realize, like, okay, the work is really starting to seep in. Because even when I'm in a place where I'm kind of in that subconscious, the North Star is still there. Right. So this is really about cultivating that North Star for you. So it's less about the rituals and more about the feeling and your own experience of it and what you know to be true. And all of you are going to have, probably like similar experiences, but also different ones and different things that have worked for you or moments where something clicked. So just a reminder that it's not like every time you meditate, you're going to have this brilliant shift and you're going to feel the tingling in your fingers and the fire is going to flow through you. And you're going to be like, I know exactly what I'm going to do next. And the clarity is, so there. That happens sometimes, but it can also just be you being calm in a situation. And that's just as important because we are real people living real lives. And if we can be kind and compassionate to the people around us, if we can help make good decisions in our work and in our families, if we can be happier with things that are pretty terrible, then I would say that that's a lot of good work and outcome that has kind of come from these practices. Any questions here in terms of some of these practices? Any thoughts around like things that you have found worked well for you? Maybe if it's not any of these out here that I've listed, is there anything else that you found has helped?
Just like exercise and walking and movement too. So and I think I'm starting to notice like when I need one or the other more, right? Like one is, to the charging, discharging conversation we had last week, like just sort of trying to figure out like it's not always the same. Sometimes like one is like a relaxing or a discharge, or not. So yeah, movement and then journaling, I think also like functions as a mindfulness for me sometimes.
Yeah, love that. I'll add that to this as well.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
the book that you recommend, The Artist's Way, in terms of the morning pages and also like taking yourself out on the 2-hour date a week. I think that's mindfulness too.
yeah. So this is where we start to truly understand like what self-care looks like, because I think in the beginning you're thinking, oh, I need to go get a massage, and I'm not saying like go get a massage, like that's a lot of good in your body, but right now you're expanding your vocabulary. You're expanding your vocabulary for being able to identify emotions, identify what you need, being able to try different things out. When you go on artist date in the artist way, you start to realize that maybe there are a lot of other things that you could do with your time that also interest you and serve you as well. So you're learning about yourself as a person. And I think that's like a lost art in our lives, because we defined ourselves when we were younger and then it was that's it. But I always think about, you always see these people that are out, and now 80s stuff is coming back, but you remember like you see the people who are like, oh, they're stuck in time, like they still have like their hair permed and they still wear the same, like they have makeup was. And I started realizing a lot of people never change past the point in which they were taking in information, and for many of them that's when they were younger, and they don't evolve with the trends because they were like, well, that's what I did at the age that I learned to put on makeup, so I will do this for the rest of my life. Like I will have like the big hair and I will do the teasing and I will do all this stuff. And some of that is coming back. So, maybe they knew something that I didn't know, or they just had a look and they stuck with it. But what was more interesting for me was this idea of where am I just using on repeat something that I learned way back then. but never questioned. Okay, like I just never questioned that this is the way that life gets to work for me, or I just never questioned that I could show up a little bit differently. If you were told that you were really smart and maybe you were an introvert, then you would think, I'm just this smart introvert, versus could you be different, or could you not be known as that? And I think there's just a lot of this labeling that happens as we were younger that now as parents we're probably much more aware of, in terms of trying to be mindful with our kids. But think about how you might have some of those things for you too. And I do think that as we start to do different things and activities, we start to break some of that a little bit here and there, and we start to push the envelope in terms of saying, well, I'm not just this one thing, so what am I then? And I think that opens up a beautiful question for then being able to say that maybe all of this is actually okay, right? All of this that I'm experiencing is part of what I'm not just experiencing, but is the perfect thing for me to experience right now. So as we start to think through, okay, like this makes sense, I want to feel that inner peace, I want to start being a daily meditator and come back in a year from now and say, like Bonnie did, that the work works, and she's starting to see how it works. So we'll talk through, how do you start this practice?
So we ended right there for our podcast today. We went on a lot longer in the actual session itself. But if you want these sessions in your own life more consistently, you liked what you heard, you're curious, you're interested, this is something you can experience too. Learning how to manage your mind, your body, your energy is not something they teach you, although I wish it was something we all learned much younger, and it was something that I had started learning much younger. But this is something that you can actually experience now. And if you feel ready, you're in a place where you're open to growth and learning a lot more about how the intangible creates the tangible, how thought creates form, about how you can take your life to a different and more expansive place in terms of your career, in terms of your relationships, in terms of your wealth and your health, then you would love coaching. So schedule a free coaching consultation today at www.mayemson.com/contact to learn more about what that experience looks like if you're a good fit for one-on-one coaching, and how you too can experience the power of what happens when we all come together as these modern seekers and look to grow together. That's it, my friends, for this week. I love you so much, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.